Starbucks lost $32 billion in market value, not because of a recession, not because of a competitor, because they replaced humans with an algorithm. For 7 straight quarters, customers stopped showing up. The numbers kept falling. And then the founder himself, the man who built this brand from nothing, wrote a public letter that essentially said, "You have destroyed what I built." That's not a business crisis. That's a public confession that a brand worth tens of billions of dollars had forgotten the single most basic thing: why its customers came in the first place. Howard Schultz did not found Starbucks. People get this wrong constantly. In 1983, Schultz was a young retail director at a small Seattle coffee importer. The company already existed. The stores already existed. Then Schultz flew to Milan on a buying trip, and there he saw something that changed everything: the Italian espresso bar. Not the coffee, not the menu, the experience. People stood at the counter. They knew the barista by name. They lingered far longer than it took to drink a single cup. The shop wasn't just a place to buy a beverage, it was a third place. Not home, not work, something in between. Schultz flew back to Seattle with one obsession: build that at global scale. The result was Starbucks as the world came to know it. At its peak, Starbucks crossed 30,000 locations, then 40,000. For years, the third place concept and the company's operating machine ran side by side, growing together, reinforcing each other. Mobile Order and Pay launched in 2014. The logic made sense. Order from your phone, pick it up at the store, save time. By the early 2020s, it was handling nearly a third of all US transactions. And that's when something began shifting quietly. Baristas stopped brewing coffee for people standing in front of them. They spent their shifts working through a queue of screens. The condiment bars, where customers customized their drinks, exchanged a few words, felt like part of something, started disappearing. The armchairs went with them. The giant ceramic mugs that made people want to stay longer were replaced with paper cups designed to move you out the door faster. The stores got louder. The orders got more complicated. Baristas were overwhelmed. And the physical space stopped matching what the brand had always promised. Schultz once said Starbucks wasn't a coffee business serving people, it was a people business selling coffee. For a decade, the company quietly flipped that sentence around, and the market eventually started paying attention. Because when the numbers finally started talking, what they said was far worse than anyone had prepared for. Fiscal Q4 2024. Starbucks released its global operating data. Global comparable sales, down 7%. US traffic, down 10%. China, their second largest market, down 14%. But it wasn't the individual numbers that were most alarming. It was how long this had been going on. Same-store sales across the international business fell for 6 consecutive quarters before the trend finally broke. In North America, 7 straight quarters. Nearly 2 full years without a single positive quarter. For a company that had spent most of its public history growing steadily, that was a serious signal. In China, the situation was more humiliating. Luckin Coffee, a local chain that survived a major accounting scandal and somehow kept going, overtook Starbucks on store count and undercut it aggressively on price. A brand that was supposed to represent urban middle-class aspiration in China suddenly looked expensive without sufficient reason. Sometime between April and June 2024, quietly, without any public announcement, a firm began building a position in Starbucks: Elliott Investment Management, one of the most feared activist firms on Wall Street, a $69.7 billion hedge fund that has taken on AT&T, Southwest Airlines, SoftBank, and Texas Instruments. They had quietly built a position reportedly worth around $2 billion in Starbucks, and they were pushing for board changes. By mid-August, just 2 months after Elliott first engaged the board, the announcement came. Laxman Narasimhan was out, in the CEO seat for roughly 17 months, gone. Brian Niccol, CEO of Chipotle for the previous 6 years. During his time there, Chipotle's share price rose 800%. Profits grew nearly 7-fold. He did it not through massive marketing campaigns or dramatic strategic pivots. He did it by fixing operations, throughput, training, menu discipline, the things that allow a busy restaurant to keep working under peak pressure. Exactly the problems living inside thousands of Starbucks locations. The news broke on August 13, 2024. Starbucks shares climbed roughly 20% that afternoon, the best single day for the stock since the company's IPO in 1992. Niccol officially started on September 9, 2024, but the weeks before that he spent not in headquarters, not in strategy meetings. He walked into Starbucks locations several times a day as an ordinary customer. What he found, in his own words from an internal memo in June 2025, performance wasn't yet where he needed it to be, and the company had to move faster. The plan he rolled out was called Back to Starbucks, and the plan was so simple it was almost startling. The condiment bars came back. The giant ceramic mugs came back. Baristas started writing Sharpie messages on cups again. The menu was cut. Fewer options meant every drink could be made faster and more consistently. Labor hours in stores were increased, with more than $500 million committed to store-level staffing in the first year alone. That wasn't a small adjustment. That reversed nearly a decade of movement in the opposite direction. An internal goal was set: most drinks served within 4 minutes. When Niccol arrived, that target was being hit only half the time. The sofas came back too. Remodels were planned for more than 1,000 locations, rebuilding the physical space around seating, lighting, and a calmer atmosphere. Even mobile ordering was re-engineered. Stores were given the ability to pace the app, sequencing drinks so the barista at the counter wasn't being buried by a screen in the back. On September 25, 2025, the company formalized the cost of all of it, a $1 billion restructuring charge. Underperforming cafes closed, around 900 non-retail positions eliminated. The corporate layer above the stores was flattened. The message was clear: less bureaucracy at the top, more people on the store floor. Fiscal Q4 2025. Global comparable sales grew 1%. That number sounds small, but remember where it came from. 7 straight negative quarters in North America, 6 in international. The first positive quarter after nearly 2 years of consecutive decline. China up 2%. North America roughly flat after 7 straight quarters of falling. But one part of this story can't be ignored. Full-year earnings per share fell to $1.63, down 51% from the prior year. The fourth quarter compressed to just 12 cents. That's what a self-funded operational turnaround looks like on the income statement in year 1. More labor, more remodels, a $1 billion restructuring charge, all investments that hit earnings immediately. For China, the answer came from a different direction. On November 3, 2025, Starbucks announced it would sell a 60% controlling stake in its China retail business to Boyu Capital, a private equity firm. The deal valued the combined China operation at around $13 billion. Starbucks kept 40% and continued licensing its brand. The structure brought in a local partner with the on-the-ground knowledge to compete where Luckin had been winning, and freed up management's time to focus on the larger problem in North America. This is still early. 1 positive quarter after 7 negative ones is not a victory. It's a sign that the direction might have changed. Schultz saw an espresso bar in Milan in 1983 and understood that what was being sold wasn't coffee. It was the feeling of belonging somewhere. 42 years later, the people running Starbucks are trying to put that feeling back. 1 remodel, 1 hired barista, 1 ceramic mug at a time. For the first time in a very long while, there's early evidence it might be working. The question now isn't whether the plan is right. The question is whether they've been gone too long to ever fully come back.